Good morning, good morning. I'm trying to invite a friend. Let's see if he gets on it. Good. How are you? Just enjoying my morning cup of green tea, and then I was just going to talk about something fitness related, and one of my friends wanted to talk. He's also a fitness coach. He wanted to come on, so I'm just waiting for him to join, and then we'll get started. Tell me where you guys are from. Where are you guys from right now? What city? What country? Drop that in the comments while we have more people joining. Come on, where the hell are you, Madison? Yep, go ahead and tell me what cities or countries you guys are from. Drop that in the comments. Let me tell Madison here. Drink that chai. No, actually, it's green tea. Straight up green tea. Like, not even, like, no sugar or anything. I usually have nothing wrong with artificial sweeteners because the science on them is pretty clear. They're actually not that bad. But I just like drinking it just for the taste. So, yeah. What about you, Ikra? What are you up to right now? All right, Madison is joined. Bring him on. Gangsta. Hell yeah. What's up, man?
How you been?
How are you?
Good.
You look
just brought your volume down from when I was watching. I don't know why.
Oh, you couldn't see it?
What? I can see you, yeah.
It wasn't showing up earlier? Because I was like, it should have notified you, but I guess not.
It didn't.
Yeah. How you been, man? How's life? How's everything?
Good and chaotic, you know.
Yeah.
Everything's running, you know, flying around. Pretty much since the holidays.
Right. Yeah, dude. I didn't really have a topic to talk about today, but I've been thinking a lot about reverse dieting, and I think that would be a good one, unless you have a better topic to talk about.
We can do that. We also need to. We never did the one we wanted to do the other week of what was it? I need more coffee. I think was rep sets. Yeah, sets and reps for different purposes. Yeah, so anyone who's watching, if you want to hear about reverse dieting, or would you rather hear about what reps and sets are good for strength and building muscle, etc., and why you would use a certain rep range or volume configuration, just leave it down in the comments. Give that a couple seconds. I'm going to grab another mug of coffee, and then we'll hit it.
Rep. Oh man, we already got a vote. Ikra, you might just win today. Okay. Ikra, talking to you. So we're just waiting for Madison to get his coffee right, and then we'll talk about other things.
What I missed?
So we got strength and reps.
Reps and strength.
Yeah.
Cool. You want to kick it off, or should I?
Yeah, I'll just start. So whenever people start, I see this a lot, and it's like a lot of people, when they get into weight training, their goal is to lose weight and build muscle. And in the first, the newbie phase, you're able to do both at times. If you take like a newbie, a beginner bodybuilder, somebody who's a beginner to strength training, and you put them on proper protein, um, nutrients, and then you also give them a nice structured training program, they'll be able to gain muscle and lose fat. But that period stops after like, I think they call it like 6 months or so. And those newbie gains are gone. But I think a lot of people really hit those newbie gains because when you're a beginner, you're probably not going to be getting enough protein anyway. Unless you're like for me, like I had been lifting for 3 years, and when I competed, I still made newbie gains. Just because I was like so consistent with my protein intake and so consistent with my training regimen now. Because I was competing, I had that like, whereas like a lot of research has been done where people are actually undertraining versus overtraining. Like a lot of people overtraining, but
yeah. In my experience with newbies and even intermediates, first off, almost nobody's overtraining. It is a real thing. It does happen, and some people do it. But in most cases, everybody's undertraining because, especially a newbie, they're incapable of creating the contractile and intensity needed to elicit actual muscular damage and stress to a greater degree. Right? They don't have that base level of strength that somebody who's been working for a greater amount of time has built up. Right. So even if you let's say we have a newbie do 5 sets of 5 versus an experienced lifter do 5 sets of 5. The experienced lifter might do 5 sets of 5 with 300 versus a newbie who's doing 5 sets of 5 with 100. The difference in stress to the body, even though it's to each lifter, it's relatively the same percentage. Let's say it's both 75% or whatever it is. The actual stress is still much higher for that intermediate lifter. 300 pounds is still 300 pounds, right? Which is why as you get stronger, you actually have more capability of beating yourself up because you're stronger and you can do more weight, right? So that's why for world-class athletes, guys that are pulling 800, 900,000 pounds, they might, if they're deadlifting that, they don't do that every week. They might not even go heavy every week, right? Because that's such a strain on the body. So when you're a beginner, one of the most important things to do is be able to learn to create that intensity. That's why lots of people everybody thinks they train hard, right? And then as soon as they come up, like if I work with somebody and they come and they actually train with me in person, they're like, "Oh my God, I wasn't training hard at all. What was I doing all this time?" Right? It's until you've seen real intensity and like really been pushed, you just have no idea what that is.
Right.
And there's some tricks for kind of pushing that, but
my personal experience, that's why you should train with a lot more people just to get diverse ideas about lifting. Like you might think your leg day is the worst, and then you might train with somebody like I was just reading an old school bodybuilding book by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like this is his autobiography. He spends like the first half of the book talking about bodybuilding, and he talks about how like when he thought he was training his calves and his like quads and his legs hard, and then he went and trained with Reg Parks, and he's like, holy shit, this guy was doing like the same amount of work but almost tripling the weight, and like just had like his intensity was on a different level. So Arnold started training at that intensity now, and I think that's where it's like really important to have like just don't box yourself in to just your own idea. But like go train with people who are better than you. Go train with people who are doing it. Like there are a lot of bro lifters, and it's really pretty easy to like differentiate the bro lifters versus an experienced good lifter. And I think like once you find those, for me, like this is like something I've learned recently, and that is like be good enough that you can recognize the experts. Once you recognize those experts, spend time with those guys, like because those people get it. And not everybody who claims to be an expert is an expert, but you have to be good enough to differentiate them. And I wish I knew the answer to that one.
Cure for pimples. So it depends. I will come right back to that, Ace. Let me just reply to Mo real quick. This is like what we talked about before, is that when you don't know anything, you don't know that you don't know anything, right? And the more you know, the more you're able to differentiate good information from bad information. Right. And so the best way to get your training intensity up, and as a newbie, one of your main things that you should be focusing on is pushing your skill of training, being able to create better contractions, tighter contractions, getting a really good shortening of the muscle, a really good lengthening, really good stretching of the muscle, being able to move weight efficiently and stable with good movement mechanics, and being able to just create good the good contractility. Best ways to get intensity up. Best way is get a coach, right? Work with somebody that's going to be able to push you, not too hard, but just right for you. Reel you back when you're going too hard, push you forward when you're going, you're not. Try to get around lifters that are better than you, people that are stronger, people that are bigger, people that have more experience. Would be like a number two. And then also check out videos of some of the greats. Look at people look at Tom Platz. Look how Tom Platz used to train like a madman. After you see that, you start to get it. And you still won't be able to execute it 100%, but you'll start to get the idea of that. Also, what's really good that I like to use with a lot of my clients to kind of teach them intensity is intensity sets is what I call them. And there's so many different ways of doing an intensity set, and there's a lot of variables or a lot of ways you can use them, and they have a lot of uses they have. But the basic one that everybody knows is like a drop set, right? That's a really, really basic one. But there's all sorts of ways you can make intensity sets more, or do them and teach you how to push yourself and go through that pain and make it more difficult. Like rest pauses, partials, all sorts of different combos that you can do. But it ultimately comes down to your mindset and your attitude. When you're on that thing, you got to put yourself, this is life and death, right? Somebody has a gun to my loved one's heads. If I don't do this rep, if I don't do another 5 reps after it's already searing pain, they will die. And you need to put yourself in that fight or flight, go just crazy mentality. And then if you can switch that on and off when you're training, your results will skyrocket.
Yeah, and the most important thing is something. Do you know 3D MJ?
Say it one more time.
You know who 3D MJ is? A group of pretty experienced.
That's 3D Muscle Journey, right? That's They do a lot of natural bodybuilding.
Yeah, they're big on natural bodybuilding, and they have one of their coaches, amazing dude. He was talking about it yesterday actually. He said when you have a beginner lifter, beginner to intermediate, and you give them 15 to 20 sets for, let's say, chest day, when they go in there, their focus is not on that one set. They keep thinking about the future sets, and that just messes them up. So they're not very focused on that one set. He's versus when we do deload weeks or things like that, and then we only have 6 or 7 sets to do in the whole workout. He's that return on investment per set is way more. But now I lift the rocks and they're shit, I only have 6 sets to do today. So now every single set matters way more, and now there's so much more focus on that one set. And it's just crazy to think, because a lot of us, bros, or a lot of people that are beginners, they think about just moving the weight for the number of reps. Nobody really thinks about the mind muscle or the intensity or the frequency, all of that. Nobody takes that into account. And I think that's where bigger gains are made. That's where because that's the biggest reason why you would see guys who are fat or guys who are overweight and they want to get lean, but they're already training 6 to 7 days a week. They're going to the gym and they're freaking just doing what they got to do. Versus the guys who been doing it for 10 years, and the guys who are who got the gains that they need, but they're only training 3 days a week now. And it's the return on investment either way, and the amount of work you can do, it's just, patience is big, but it's also learning or really understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it. A lot of people don't get that. A lot of people don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, and that messes them up. So answer the question that somebody asked, and then we'll get back to the reps and sets.
Yeah, so we got a couple. So Ace wants to know how much we weigh and how tall we are. So let's do that one quick, and then we'll answer the pimple question, and then we'll kind of come back to the reps and sets.
Go for it.
So Ace, I am 6 foot, and I'm currently about 232, 235, 230, depending on my water. Currently, because I've been bulking. You, Mo?
5'6", 5'7", depending on my hair. And then I currently weigh 162. Actually, today I was back to 160, so it fluctuates, but 162, 160 water weight. And then what was the other question?
The question was what's the cure for pimples? So the cure for pimples kind of depends on what the cause of pimples is in your case. So I don't know exactly what your age is. Typically, if you're getting pimples, it has to do with it can come from a couple of things. It can be on the simple level, it could just be like a hygiene issue. Just make sure your face or whatever area is getting clean adequately. Scrub it sometimes to get rid of some of the dry skin and stuff. If it's a hormonal thing, something's out of balance. Your estrogen can be a little bit too high. Your androgen can be a little too high. You can have a little too much DHT. So assuming you're not using anything, and you're just on your natural levels, and that's what your body kind of leans towards. You gotta kind of find out if you're someone who tends to be really like kind of dry and harder and leaner on the gooch area specifically. Okay. You might need to wash down there a little more, buddy. You gotta keep it clean, and I don't know how old you are, but if you might be a little careful with what ladies you're seeing. Okay, so to continue now, so going back to the reps, the reps and sets and stuff, so what's the protocol that everybody, when they first start is basically told, right? What does everyone typically hear? All right, what is the most popular one? You say it. I'll say what I think. What I think the most popular one is.
5 is pretty common. 4 by 10, 4 by 8 to 10. That one's I hear that a lot.
3 by 10. I think the 3 by 10, 3 by 8, 3 by 10 is the number one thing that everyone hears first. That's the go to a doctor ASAP. That's yes. Have it. You should probably have it looked at by a professional. Would be my first recommendation. Anyways, so I think that's the most popular thing that everyone hears. Followed like that, and then 5 by 5. I think of the two most popular, volume schemes. Would you agree with that? More or less. So the question is, are these optimal, and why? Right now, that goes back to your goal. So the most important thing is choosing something that's appropriate for your goal. So if you're trying to build strength is primarily a function of the nervous system. The muscular system is also important, and strength is directly related to the cross-sectional area of your muscle. So if you get bigger, you will get stronger. But the most important thing for strength is how contractile that tissue is, how many motor units you can use, how many fibers you can activate, and then also the effectiveness of your movement pattern, and so both the activation of the working muscle, but also the inactivation of the reciprocal, right? So that's what strength comes down to. So to train that, you want things that are going to stimulate on the nervous level, stimulate your nervous system to perfect the movement and get more contractility. So typically, I recommend between 2 to 4 to 5 reps for this. Typically, I kind of cut it at 4 for a pure strength range.
Perfect. So we have a great question now, something that we know the answer to. It's how to get have people have that what do you recommend for people that have slighter, chubbier face?
With a slim body type. So you, I think this guy's trolling us, to be honest.
I don't, girl, I cannot tell.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What do you want to answer this?
Yeah. So like, if you I actually just shared a picture on my Instagram, and it was like Facebook this morning reminded me of a picture from 5 years ago when I was a freshman in college, and that picture has like a really chubby face of mine, and I look like I'm eating pizza, but on the picture to the right, I took it like a week ago, and I weigh like 5 pounds more than I weighed back then, but my face looks like way more leaner. And so my answer to that is it all just comes down to like overall body fat percentage. And back then, yeah, I looked fat, and the reason was I had my lean muscle mass versus body fat percentage was way up. And now that I've gained a lot more muscle over the years, my face looks a lot leaner, even though I weigh more. So I guess one thing to be careful here is like don't just look at the scale weight, because or the BMI, body mass index, because those things can trick you. But if you look at the overall picture, there's like, so you cannot just lose, obviously, probably you guys probably know, you can't spot reduce fat, right? So you can't just lose it in your legs, on your face, or in your arms. You're going to lose it all throughout your body. Where some people do have some genetic variations that make them hold more fat in certain areas. Like for me, it's the abdomen area. I have friends who get fat in other areas before their abs disappear. So those
my arm.
Yeah, those
I'll have shredded arms and fat fucking arms.
So those factors do come into play, but they're pretty minor compared to like the overall body fat reduction throughout your body. So if your face is actually chubby, if it's chubby, strong chubby, then you are holding fat somewhere, and that's why we push strength training so hard.
Ace, I would not recommend chewing gum. Chewing gum actually may make the problem worse, because the other thing, it's probably primarily a fat thing. You're probably also, it's possible you're also just holding a lot of fluid in your face. So from whatever your minerals, and salts are like, and depending on what your diet is, and gum is going to make that worse. It'll also make the artificial stuff in there will make you hold more water, and also fucks with your insulin, so it's not good for losing fat either. So I would not recommend that. Okay, so we basically said, so like I generally recommend like 2 to 4 for like kind of a pure strength, neurological benefit. Obviously there is some carryover to muscular, but primarily it's neurological at that point. Starting to be like from the 5 to 7, 5 to 7 is kind of starting to be the lower hypertrophy end. So kind of like the heavier side of hypertrophy, and then kind of 8 to 12 is kind of more more of a mid range. But I'll tell people to go all the way upwards of 20s, and occasionally I'll also say 30s, 40s, 50s. It's kind of because there's more than one way through which muscle grows, and that's the reason why people will say, oh well, once you start going to that high, you're just working on muscular endurance. You're not actually building muscle at that point. I find that to be not true whatsoever. Especially like my legs and my delts. If I do squats, the really great thing I recommend everybody try is do 20s. Do 20s on squats, and don't do it light. Make it heavy. So like just the other day, I did 2. I think this is now a PR of 285 for 20. And my goal is I want to be able to get to like 315 for 20, and then also be able to eventually just keep going up and up on my 20s. And I guarantee your legs will explode from doing that. So that's an example. Like for my and delts too, I also find respond very, very well to high reps. So I'll do 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, 20s, 20s. For any raises, I don't mean presses, but any raises, I usually do not go lower than 20.
Yeah. So, and
long beard, and short hair will give you the best illusion of being thin.
And just having like some form of jawline, that really helps. I love it. I'm just having so much fun inside. And yeah, dude. So like, for example, like last Tuesday, I'm running a hypertrophy program. So, and I had like, forgot about the rep range, Bob. I was like 4 sets of 10 or something, and it was on squats. And I fall into my like, I'm a creature of habit, and it's unless I have like a notebook where I write down what I did last week, it's hard for me to go up. Like I just like stick to that same freaking weight. And I figured that out like about a year ago, and now I'm like constantly trying to battle it. And so one trick that I do is like I always like write down what weight I did, because you can really trick yourself with like thinking about just because you're changing the rep range, you're like making the gains. You're probably not. Like if you're the same amount of weight, your body isn't under enough stress to create that demand. So I was like, you know what? I've been squatting 225 for over a year now. Let's just use 225 for 4 sets of 10. Like, let's say if I can do it. I was able to do it, but at almost like every rest period between each set, I was like on the floor. Like, it was a great freaking feeling that I needed that like 2-minute rest just to like get up. And my body really responded well to that, because like the next few days, not only was, I mean, soreness is like a minimal factor, but like I really did feel that my body really felt that one. And it was just because I decided to like go with it. I was like, you know, I've done 225 for such a long time, but I've never pushed it to this rep range. I would always like keep 225 around 5 reps. I was like, you know, like let's double it. Let's double the work today and see if I can do it. And see, that's when like I was just watching Chris Duffin yesterday, and he was teaching Silent Mike how to like set up for a squat, and like how to do it, and how to like how to twist the floor, and how to like breathe in and brace, and like just fucking like the supreme stuff. And that day, man, you cannot do that much work without really learning those things. And I remember breathing had to be on point in order to last those 10 reps. Everything was just like had to be on point. And I think that's where like, so reps and sets are important, but also like I know a lot of you are beginner to intermediate. Please do not forget the intensity. Do not forget the frequency. Do not forget like the weight. Like you might get, because like what's the common consensus in America? It is like, oh man, I should be doing like, you know, low weight, high reps to lose weight. And that's just like bullshit, because you can literally pick up a 15-pound dumbbell and like just curl it for 30 times and not feel a thing. And that's not what you want. That's a waste of time, and it's not going to get you the results you want. So be like mindful of like the weight, the intensity, the whole like kind of the whole scenario, like how tired you are the day after, how sustainable, like all these things, just keep those in mind. Because there's no like, in my opinion, there's no sweet spot. There's no sweet number that like, oh, once you hit this, you'll start gaining muscle. Like a lot more factors play.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, because you bring up the point of progressive, progressive resistance progression. Some things. What?
I'm gonna click ASAP.
Okay. So you always got to be going heavier with something, or not heavier. Sorry, you always have to be progressing with something. Something has to increase. Either the weight that you're doing needs to increase. You can start off weight training anytime. Everything has to progress at some point. You either have to be doing more weight, more reps, more sets, or less time. Something needs to increase for your body to give something for it to acclimate to. So I typically, continuing on like what you said, right? So you always would do 225 for 10s, I think you said, right?
5.
So, for 5. Okay.
How I doubled it.
Yeah. So for me, typically, like I won't do the same rep scheme this week after week. However, and you should always log what you do. Always keep track of what you do so you know what you did. You can do cardio and weight training. We'll come back to that. I always record what you do, so you know what you did and you know what your records are. So, like for instance, let's say you do 10 reps with 225 this week, for 3 sets of 225 this week. Next week you do 6s. The week after that you do 8s. Week after that you come back to 3 by 10. This time you do 3 by 10. You need to beat the previous time you did that same scheme. You should be stronger. You should do more. You should push yourself. Right? So in somehow way you should progress, whether in some fashion. That's one of the ways I like to periodize things. So I'm not going purely linear. Same thing same scheme week after week, because I find that's a very stale stimulus. And this gives me more variety. It's more of those ranges that I spoke about earlier. But at the same time, you're still able to progress. Now, I forget there was something else you said I wanted to respond to.
Intensity, focus.
Something about. So when you're one of the biggest things about being a novice and an intermediate is you need to get in shape to get in shape. In order to be able to train hard, you need to be in shape to do that. You need to have the adequate level of movement mechanics. You want to have the adequate level of conditioning. So even for an advanced or intermediate person, before you go into a big hard training block, you need to have a block that's going to get you ready for that. So you don't just going to go to some advanced bodybuilder or advanced powerlifter and be like, oh, I'm going to do his routine. You can't. It took years for him to build up to be able to do the routine that he's now doing, right? So you can't just copy it and expect it to work for you the way it's working for them. They are already at that level where they're able to handle that volume. Their technique's already clean enough that they can handle that volume without being totally beat up by it. So you need to make sure that you're in shape and prepared in multiple ways to handle the work that you're going to be doing.
Cool. All right, Madison. I'm really pumped to answer Ikrar's question, because I really me and you, we can talk for hours. Mm-hmm. And I think let's help somebody. She's a complete beginner.
Yes.
And we're all about adding value to people's lives. So
Absolutely.
Let's say if we get our years of experience, let's say we can give her a practical plan to get her started and not feel like she's missing out on anything. So her first question was, how do you recommend someone to start off weight training? Please tell me.
What's your goal?
Right.
First thing you need to do is figure out what is your goal and where do you want to go. So, right, because if you don't know, and if you've seen us before, we've talked about this. If you don't know where you want to go, you're not going to know what to do. So I can't tell you what to do because I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. Right?
Is it to
so?
I'm just helping her out. If you can comment below your goal to add muscle, what is your goal?
Get stronger, build muscle, get leaner. So as far as just starting, the best thing to do is to start. But when you start, you want to start with a plan that's going to work for what your goals are.
Look lean.
Look more lean. So really, a really basic, starting point is I would recommend probably, so if you're completely new to this, kind of just working on the basic movements, several days a week. So maybe you can do three days a week of like a total body or a very slight split. Working on building muscle, right? Because the muscle is going to increase your metabolism. As far as leaning out, a big part of that is the diet. So you want to kind of look at what you're eating, find a smarter way to do that. If you need more help, you can either contact me and Mo, and we can talk to you a little more in more detail. But we'll kind of give you like a blueprint right now. So kind of 3 days a week, work on your big basic movements, your squats, your deadlifts, your presses, your rows, pull downs, stuff like that.
Like build your body. If you're very new to this, you also use some machines. Like get your ice kind of get your body moving. And then just and don't fall for the ego lifts. Like when you go to squat and deadlift, or like even bench, you will be tempted to like go higher. But it's so easy to injure yourself, and especially deadlifts. If you're like just like get the movements right, understand like because it's gonna take a while. So that's why we just want you to get started because. When you get started, it's still gonna take like 6 months to a year for you to fully understand what's going on. So the goal is to get in there, start moving your body 3 to 4 days a week, like Madison said, and then also, and here's what I would totally recommend: use an app, MyFitnessPal or something. Just like track down what you eat throughout the day without making any changes. For like first day or two, just literally track what you eat, and then based on that, you'll be able to tell where do I need to make some changes. So where is it getting confusing? The diet part?
So I'd recommend while you're in there training, right, just start with, really basic total body movements. And so if you to learn how to, and just work on doing them very well, work on the technical aspects of performing them very well. And then slowly as once you learn how to do it. And so a really good instructional of how to do those lifts, check out my YouTube, Method on Strength and Performance. There's some good tutorials on how to brace, how to root, some of the basic movement mechanics of how to use your core, and then how to squat and deadlift are on there. And I'd like to get more on there soon as well. But those are what's up there right now. And that'll give you a really, really, really strong start. And you'll probably be squatting and deadlifting better than most people in the gym if you follow those tutorials. So start by doing them really well, and then just kind of slowly get a little stronger with it, right? And just do something starting 3 days a week to start, or something like that. And right then, like Mo said, track what you're eating, figure out what you're doing right now, and then even just one change is going to start you in the right direction after you get your baseline down.
And please, like I stress this. Be consistent with it. Like the reason I say that is like don't like follow what we're saying for a week and then like run over to somebody else for the next 2 weeks, because that's like the surefire way that it's not gonna work out. Because the more you learn, the better it is. But in the beginning, it's better to stick with one plan and just follow that, because that one being like any plan will give you results, but it'll only give you good results if you stay consistent. So like if you're constantly like, here and there. And remember, like, then you like don't spend too much time on a treadmill. Do not like spend too much time doing cardio. That's not gonna get you I promise that's not gonna get you the results you want, and you're gonna hate your life. Like the goal is you want to look lean, so the goal is to build that muscle and have your diet on track. So we start dropping that body fat percentage, and that's literally just keep those two things in mind: add more muscle and lower the body fat. And once you get that going, everything else will start falling in place. And don't focus too much on supplements. Don't focus too much on like expensive shit. Like, do I need to buy this? Do I need to buy this? Just get in the gym and start moving your body and start eating right. Like literally those should be your only two goals. Like too many people focus on, what protein shake should I drink? Or like supplements are important, but they're mere supplemental. Like they're not the solution that you want. And the goal, like just remember the basics and just learn the basics well and never fall again.
Yeah, and remember that this is a long-term thing. This is a lifestyle thing. This is something that's going to be part of your life. It's something you're doing for a long time. It's not going to happen overnight, but with good work and consistency, like Mo was saying, you're going to get there, and you're going to get there, effectively, as long as you just keep going and doing. And if you need more help and you want a more specific plan just for you, send me or Mo, a personal, a direct message, and we'll talk to you in some more detail if you're interested in coaching.
And we have so Madison, if you had to if somebody's a complete beginner, mm-hmm. what rep or set range would you recommend for a given exercise? Just a complete beginner, somebody who's just getting into it. I personally and this is weird. I started my mom on a program, and she's like a complete beginner. But now she's actually been doing it for 5 weeks, and now she's sticking to it. I told her just 4 sets of 10. I was like, Mom, this is like leg extension. This is like this. This is this. Just remember that number that you're going to do this exercise 4 times and try to get to that 10 reps. And that now that she understands more, I can explain more to her. But in the beginning, do you tell your clients like, hey, Just keep this number in mind.
I would agree on all the assistance exercises for the big lifts, like the squat, the deadlift, and bench you can go a little higher. But like on squat and deadlift, I'd probably recommend keep the reps on the lower side, so you're not too fatigued. You can just really practice them and put the sets on the higher side. So either like 6 sets of 3, or 5 sets of 4, or like 8 sets of 2. And you like a bunch of those. Occasionally you can do like 4 sets of 5, or 4 sets of 6. But for the big lifts, I would, for the squat and the deadlift particularly, I would keep it around there. For the bench, I would go a little bit higher in the reps. Same thing with overhead press. I would go higher in the reps, but not so high that your form is ever going to be at risk. Keep the form always and the technique as your primary objective right now. And once your body learns to do that, then you can start to push on the gas pedal a little more and start progressing, whether it be reps or weight. That would be my recommendation. But what Mo said, I agree with. For all the assistance stuff, all the machines, all the pull downs, biceps or whatever, any kind of back exercises, rows and stuff like that, I would say generally 3 to 4 sets of 8 to 12, plus or minus.
Get you though, and like, yeah, like to get that many reps, you need to like you'll need to like lighten up on the load, and that's important because in the beginning we don't want you to go too high on the weight, because your body's so new to all this. Like my biggest thing is avoid injury at all cost. Like you don't want like people just ego lifting and going for that high weight, and once you like try to go 10 reps, it's pretty like it's a given that you're not going to be like doing your 1 rep max at that point. Like it's pretty light load, and not light, it's like moderate to heavy, but you're able to do it, and that's what we want. So the biggest thing I have for you is get started, get in the gym, and then as you like go through it, you'll understand, you'll have more questions, and then just reach out to us, and we'll help you out there. The important thing is, and I think a lot of people get stuck on that, like getting started phase, because that's scary. And getting started in anything is like the hardest part. Once you get rolling, it gets it'll get easier, but it gets a lot simpler. Like you have formed a habit, and yeah.
Cool. You want to take one more question? If anyone else has a question, we can answer real quick.
Yeah. AMZD, I really appreciate you, man. Definitely lifestyle and persistence, great work. Instagram page, a wealth of inspiration. I really appreciate that, man. Yeah, dude, that's happy. This is good. I like Instagram lives. I watch a lot of other people, so I was like, we should start our own.
Yeah, I like when we do the joint Instagram lives.
I feel like
I kind of prefer it to the Facebook one a little bit. I feel like the screen cuts better. Sorry, what?
On Facebook lives, people don't ask these personal questions as much, so like are afraid to ask for help. On Instagram lives, it's a lot more like it's different.
I like the way it splits the screen better too on here versus on the Facebook Live. Just be careful to save it, because it's really easy to not save it and then lose the video. So it's only up for 24 hours, and that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, Instagram, I think their whole thing is like servers, and like they just keep it like such short term that, and now like so many, but like Facebook is able to do it. They better get Instagram on that too. Like
it's the same company, so. It's just the stories thing came around to compete with Snapchat.
Brilliant idea.
You just have to remember to save it. That's the biggest thing. So then you can always repost it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like, when Facebook, when Instagram started stories, I was kind of pissed. I was like, they stole it from Snapchat, and a lot of people were. A lot of like the celebrities, they were just like. They're like, I hate this, I'm never going to use it. I'm only going to use the other one. But looks like we have a question. So people talk about plateauing and getting used to exercise, so the muscle isn't shot.
That's a great question. Really great question.
Perfect question.
Okay, so Yeah, I'll gladly talk about this. So the thing about this is, so acclimating and adapting to an exercise is a good and a bad thing. You want to adapt to it, but then it will lose. It's going to lose its effectiveness. However, there's also some things that are just never going to change for the most, like as far as movements go. You're always going to. Everything is a permutation of the basics, right? A squat, a bench, a deadlift, a press, a row, a pull. All that stuff essentially remains the same. However, but little tweaks is all it takes to make it different. So typically, what I like to do, if I'm using I'll use basically, I'll periodize something over a shorter period and things over a longer period. So within a given block, let's say I'll do a single movement. So like let's use we'll use squats as an example. So for 4 weeks, I'm going to squat, but for those 4 weeks, the way I do it, I will vary my reps week to week for those 4 weeks, and then maybe after 4 weeks, I will switch my squat. So now instead of doing a low bar back squat, maybe I'll do a high bar squat, or I'll do a safety squat bar, or something like that. Be some sort of slight tweak to the movement, but it's still relatively the same. But it also depends on what the goal is. As far as if it's strength, things need to stay more specific for it to have a strength carryover. If the goal is muscle building, it doesn't have to necessarily be that specific, other than put stress on the muscle. So like, for instance, if you're trying to get a really big bench, if you incline bench or do a slight change on the bench press, like a slightly wider grip or a slightly closer grip, or a very slightly different bar or something, all of that stays relatively specific. But if you go to use a hammer strength press machine, a chest press machine or chest fly, that's not going to carry over as well to the bench, right? The kind of order, it might carry over some of your resistance exercises, that might carry over to your bench, but it's not going to really build your bench. But it might be really good for building your pecs. So that's, let's see, pyramid.
What is do you think so the whole concept of muscles getting shocked, muscles getting confused, that's pretty much bro science, and back in the 70s that was pretty famous, oh, you gotta shock the muscle. What are your thoughts on that?
There is validity to it. But the underlying mechanics of it is it's not confusing the muscle, right? But your body does, if you just do the same thing all the time, your body will acclimate to that, and that becomes your new baseline. That becomes the new normal. So the thing that's going to, whatever throws you out of homeostasis is what you're going to adapt to. So whether that's an increase in load, whether it's an increase in sets or reps or intensity set, things that throw you out of homeostasis is what you end up having to adapt to. So there is validity, and you do need to, you can't do the same thing all the time. You need to change your stimulus in various ways while always progressing in one fashion or another, right? So if you come back and train a year, from now to 1 year from now, you should be doing more reps, more sets, more something in some way, right? The average work done will be higher 1 year from now, if you do everything well, if you're doing everything right. To answer the question. But I can give more detail on that. Let's see. How often you change kind of comes down to your training experience, your goals, and also kind of how your body reacts to stuff. So, like I said, typically I would leave at least 3 weeks of a given movement before changing it, so that you can get better at it and progress at it, right? Because adapting to it, you will get more out of the exercise if you just change it every week, you're not going to get better at the exercise and get more out of it subsequent weeks. So let's say you do 3 weeks. In week 2 and 3, you're going to get more out of it than you did in week 1, because you got better at that movement. So you can't change things too often.
Totally agree. Totally. Brent, we're talking by the book definition, strength is about 3-4 things, and that is skill acquisition, which comes with time, neurological adaptation, so your central nervous system and like how it's acclimating to the movement. That's also practice, and then hypertrophy. So it's just like all these things contribute to the one factor, with strength, and that's why like you might see some people who are skinny, but they can bench press more than the guy who's like has more muscle mass. Because it's not just about the muscle mass. It's not just about one thing. It's about more like practice. And that's why I think like 3 weeks is a good enough time to like before you make a change. So don't want to compromise form or heavyweight, and ensuring the change is there in due course. Correct. And
it does come back to goal too, right? So like again, if your goals are strength oriented, also remember that strength is a function of specificity. So if you're measuring your strength with your bench press, then your bench press needs to be practiced. But if your goals is just to build muscle, you don't need to ever bench press technically. I mean, I probably still would. It's a great exercise, but you don't need to bench press. So,
yeah, man, dude, nailed it. Specificity, that's the word. I keep forgetting, like, specificity. I have a hard time saying
specificity,
but it's so true. Like, it is the word. It is the word for like, and I think like it's just like a lot of these things that we're throwing at you is these are for like intermediate to advanced lifters. So like if you're a beginner, a lot of this is gonna go above your head, but that's all right. But you'll get to that point one day where you'll start asking these questions, right? Because
it'll plant the seed and it'll help you be ahead. Because if thinking about this stuff, even if it's not executed perfectly now, will still benefit you in the long term. And what was I going to say? And because one other thing about the rotations is like Mo touched on with there's the difference between putting stress on the nervous system and putting stress on the muscular system, right? So if you're trying to build let's say you're trying to build your muscle, right? If you're going really heavy, that might take a lot of strain on your nervous system, which is going to which can affect when you're able to train next and put stress on the muscle, because the period of recovery is different. So you need to be able to choose what you're going to use to balance that out. So, because how fast your muscle recovers and how fast your nervous system recovers. Your nervous system might take a week or more sometimes to recover from something really, really hard, but your muscle only takes a couple days. So you could really train it again in a few days. So
I agree. Yeah. Like a lot of you from intermediate to advanced lifters who are watching, you will know when that happens. Like when your central nervous system feels like shit, dude. Like you have done me damage in a good way, but you feel it. Like, and that's why a lot of my friends who are like competitive power, they go to like a powerlifting meet, and then the next few days they're like shot. Like they've hit.
For those that have never felt it, it's basically feels like you're just tired. You're weak, and you just don't have that pop and that explosiveness, and you just don't feel like ready to go. You just feel like lethargic and tired. And your body is sleep is the main way to recharge your nervous system, and the main way to grow. Sleep is out of all the things that you can do for training, sleeping is probably the most important thing you can do, whatever your goal is. And it's often underplayed, but it is so critical, and not everybody works on optimizing their sleep, which is actually a huge advantage that anybody can take advantage of, whether you're trying to lose weight, lose fat, build muscle, get stronger, whatever you can do, whatever you're doing, sleeping is probably the most important thing that you're not doing as well as you could.
And the reason is you guys, I mean, exercise is great, but you have to remember that exercise is still a stress on the body. It's a stressor to the body. And to your body in the optimal shape, you need to give your body that rest period. You need to have quality sleep at night. You need to and cut down on that's why I don't promote a lot of supplements, because a lot of them are stimulants in one way or the other.
Workouts, just all stims.
right? Like it's just like your nervous system is always just fight or flight, firing, and then a lot of you are probably students here. And Madison and I, we have college degrees. He's even got his master's. We understand like what it's like being a student, and yeah, like most likely you're gonna be, always studying for something. So you're trying to like optimize your awake hours, and you're drinking coffee to pull all nighters. And you have to know that that's not the best time to like build the most amount of gains. You can, but just like I don't know, schedule around your lifestyle. Like I made a mistake of trying to compete while I was still in, and that's usually not a good idea because first of all you have too much stress on your body already, and then you can do it, and it's a great thing because once you overcome that, you have a lot more confidence. But just know that like you have to keep your lifestyle in mind, and that's why like getting optimal sleep and like the whole thing, that's what's healthy. Not just going to the gym, not just eating healthy. It's like the more you progress in this journey, the more you realize there's more than one thing just like you need to keep track of. Like, and it's yeah, like there's so many different factors that come into play to make a healthy human being, and sleep is one of them. Exercising is one of them. Eating right is one of them. Being around positive people is one of them. I mean, all these things just literally come into play, and the more you do it, the better you'll get.
Yes, it is. If you ever try not working out, falling asleep can sometimes be too hard because you haven't exhausted yourself enough. And it's very important for a lot of reasons. Also getting the blood flow and moving stuff around, moving lymph around. Another tip for improving your sleep is, particularly now that it's winter, if you're up in the northern hemisphere like we are, we don't get nearly the amount of sunlight we're supposed to, which means our vitamin D levels are low. And vitamin D is critical for putting us into deep REM sleep, which is where everything recovers. So tissue only repairs in paralytic sleep, which I believe is long wave and REM sleep. The only times your body fixes things. So that if you don't spend time there, those things actually never actually get fixed. And it basically, your body has a checklist or like a to-do list, right? And it doesn't get, it won't do new things. So let's say you're working out. Let's say you did chest, then legs, then whatever. You haven't slept. Your chest hasn't recovered, so it's not going to recover your back. It's not going to do that. You also had a really stressful day at work, so it hasn't repaired from that and that and that, right? And it will do it in that order. So if you're training today, it might not actually repair that for several days until you catch up on all those things that you haven't fixed because you haven't had adequate sleep or adequate REM sleep, particularly adequate REM sleep, to be able to repair those things. So making sure you have, so especially if you're especially if you're darker skinned, and especially if you're in a northern, if you're in the northern hemisphere and it's winter right now, and you're not getting sunlight, you probably should supplement with some vitamin D. To know exactly how much you need, you should really get a blood test. But typically, I find most people are very, very deficient, and I recommend like 10,000 IUs a day. That's a starting point. And that can probably come down over time, but that'll help bring your levels up pretty quick. And it's also, what's important to go with that is also vitamin B. But the B you don't actually want to take for an extended period of time. This is actually a bit to cover in here, but vitamin B is basically your body all the vitamin B you ever need should be produced by the microbiome. Certain bacteria within your digestive system. But if you don't have the right bacteria, they won't be producing the vitamin Bs. They need each other to produce the other vitamin Bs for them to live off of. So they're symbiotic and they work together to live off each other. But they also supply your body with vitamin B. But if your biome is off, there's not enough B in there for them to adequately grow. So for about 3 months, I recommend taking a vitamin B50 complex. But then stopping, because then once your biome comes back, you will actually be taking too much vitamin B